Alrighty, let's talk DataHub roadmap. So, first, before we dig into what we're going to do in 2020, or sorry, in Q1 of 2023, wanted to do a quick recap of our recent contributions just for January. So in January, we merged 184 PRs across our main DataHub project and DataHub Helm. We had 27 contributors in one release, so that was 096. We also had a patch release following that with 961. But big shout out to our first time contributors. We had 8 new folks contributing there, and 29. I'm realizing that these numbers don't add up. We had 27 contributors across the board. Apologies for that one. In terms of project updates, so like our highlights from that release, we are now supporting embedded Looker dashboards and Tableau and Mode. Just basically, if there's a dashboarding system that you're integrated with, you can now embed, if they have an embed functionality, you can now embed those resources within DataHub itself. From an integration side, we had a bunch of really great contributions from the community, specifically our Postgres ingestion now supports omitting lineage edges between views. Our Snowflake ingestion supports extracting tags. We have some improvements to the Vertica ingestion. And then likewise, the Glue ingestion now omits an S3 lineage edge for data that's written with the S3 or S3N client. So again, all 4 of those were community contributions. Really, really appreciate it there. There's a ton in here and we have a ton to cover. So I'm gonna move through. I'm just gonna move on to the next part of it. But this is all captured in our release notes, so you can take a look at that as well. So let's talk Q1 2023. From a user experience standpoint, we have 2 main initiatives that we're going to be kicking off. One is focused on discovery around how we can improve the browse experience. So this is really focused on understanding kind of like the common search or the common ways or the workflows that folks go through when they're browsing for entities within DataHub. In 2022, if you've been following along, we did a lot of improvements around our actual search experience. So searching for specific entity types or specific keywords. But we want to kind of shift away from that keyword search and more just kind of the browse and navigating groups of entities. So I'm going to be teaming up with Brittany, who's our new designer that we welcomed, in December. And this will inform what we build out in future cycles. Separately, we are going to be introducing the ability to subscribe to an entity and send notifications via Slack. So this is a highly requested feature from our community. And the idea is that we want to be able to make it easy for folks to understand when something has changed with an entity. That way you can, take advantage of that real-time, metadata management. So we are excited to ship that one for you guys. From an ingestion standpoint, we have one concrete ingestion source that we're going to be working on, and that's going to be a partnership with Fivetran. We also have 2, again, discovery initiatives, and I'm emphasizing discovery here because this will be something where we're doing a lot of outreach within the community, and that will truly inform what we build. So your feedback will be really, really impactful there. So we'll be looking at how we can make some improvements around earn casing. So it's just kind of a technical, like an implementation detail, but then also looking at our error reporting to make it easier to debug ingestion issues when you are working on getting metadata ingested into DataHub. From a developer experience standpoint, we are going to be open sourcing a functionality to propagate tags and terms between entities. What does that mean? The action will be, so it's more of like a backend implementation. And what's going to happen is when you have entities that are connected by lineage, so dataset A is connected to dataset B, you can configure basically copying terms and glossary terms and tags if applied to one or the other so that they are copied between the 2 of them. So the idea there is really just kind of like minimizing redundancy in any of that tagging. And this is really just kind of a step towards that propagation journey. And so we're concretely starting with tags and terms. The other thing is that we're continuing to make improvements to our search relevance. This is both just kind of from like a scalability standpoint, so pagination, to support a higher volume of entities, but then also just improvements to search ranking, autocomplete, surfacing related entities, et cetera. All right, so that's I forgot to put the roadmap view in here, but this is public. All the details on this are public in our roadmap portal. I'll be sure to link that out in Slack when we share out the recording. One other thing is that we are working closely with the Stripe team. So if you were at Town Hall a few months ago, if you saw this on our YouTube channel, the Stripe team has done an amazing amount of customization within their own instance to understand observability and kind of SLA tracking for data pipelines. So we're working closely with them to actually have them contribute that functionality back into the project. So we're going to be, this is something where we are not, the central team is not the ones driving the implementation, but we're really shepherding that through so that we can make sure that that contribution is made available for folks in the community. All right, Shirshanka, let's talk data products. And again, this is still in our Q, we're still talking Q1 roadmap. So Shirshanka, I'll hand it over to you for data products, contracts, schemas, et cetera.
Cool. Hey, everyone. One of the things that we love to do is have the community actually tell us what's important and what needs to get built out. And one of the things that happened early on, actually in even 2020, was Saxo Bank did a data mesh implementation, and as part of that, they used DataHub as their data discovery layer. And then fast forward to August of 2022, there was a lot of interest in the community for having data products as an entity in the metadata model. And so Maggie created the design data product entity channel back in August of 2022, less than 6 months ago, saying, hey, let's get a few interested folks together. And then conversations started happening. So the next thing that happened was Maggie next. Ray dropped in and said, hey, I've got some ideas, and here's my plan, here's my proposal. And he had a beautiful picture of how he would integrate data products into the existing data model. And then fast forward a few more months, Eric showed up and said, hey, Ray, this is great, but I have some other additions to this idea, and here's what I think, and I'm working on this idea in a fork. And would love to get feedback. And then, there were a lot of conversations about it. And then Stefan showed up recently and he said, well, I've been studying data mesh and I've got, a full-on entity relationship model built out. And here's what I'm planning to publish, but I would love to share it with the community as well. So it's pretty cool to see all of these conversations happening async, people around the world kind of contributing and collaborating together to come up with what does a shared data product standard almost look like on top of DataHub's metadata model. And so I've taken the lead in creating an RFC that tries to collect all of the feedback that we've gotten so far and created an RFC to capture the discussion so far. And I'm going to be maintaining it going forward. And the plan really is to use the best ideas that we've got coming from the community, people who are actually implementing data products and data mesh at their companies, and create a data model that actually makes sense, that is practical and works for our community members. So that's happening. So stay tuned for that, data products. At the same time, there have been other discussions happening around schemas as a top-level entity. So back in, I think, September, I opened an RFC to start kind of the community discussion around this, because people have often found that while data sets are important and topics and tables and dashboards and all of these are important, schemas, logical schemas, have their own kind of place in the metadata model. And there have been a lot of proposals for actually including schemas as a top-level entity as well. So there's another RFC open that discusses what should a schema model look like in DataHub. And then fast forward a little further, as Maggie just said, we recently had a conversation around data contracts in the community. So Maggie, if you want to hit next. And what does a data contract look like? I mean, just a sneak peek of an example data contract that someone might write, maybe something in YAML where you give the name of a data contract and maybe you define a schema for the entity using kind of a logical language like JSON schema or something like that. And inside the schema language, you define validation rules, things like range that you want to check, not nulls, the standard stuff. And then you might define what data sets you want to cover with that data contract, and maybe you want to add additional quality rules. This is kind of roughly where the industry is in terms of thinking about what a data contract looks like. And then when you think about how a data contract actually needs to be provisioned and deployed and how it actually fits with the rest of the data stack, as we talk about what the industry is coalescing around, we seem to be aligning around an architecture that looks like using Git as a repository for these data contracts, and then having a CI/CD pipeline deploying this into a contract registry. Now, of course, we think DataHub is a perfect example of something that could serve as a contract registry. And then downstream of the contract registry are essentially operators that are enforcing the contract and monitoring the contract and making sure that the data assets that are being covered by the data contracts are actually healthy and up to date. So why is this all related? Why is this all interesting to talk about together? Well, if you think about it, and I've been looking at kind of the data models and how people are thinking about these things, it's actually quite interesting. These are highly related concepts. A data product, when people talk about data products, is often one-for-one or one-to-many with a data set, a logical data set, or a physical data set. Data contracts often cover one or more data sets. Data sets often have one or more schemas. And similarly, data products themselves could have 0 or more schemas. And so if you look at kind of all of our conversations that have happened across a bunch of different Slack threads and even these RFCs, we're all trying to achieve similar outcomes, which is data products, schemas, data sets, data contracts. They're all kind of related. They need to be sort of thought through together. And then we can do very interesting things once we've got all of these things added to the metadata model, which is we can move towards a world of declarative data management. And I think that's what we're seeing emerge as a pattern that everyone is excited about. You can define what you want to exist, whether it's a data product or a data contract or a schema, and then you can have individual operators that are working on your data stack that are making those things real. So you might have a data discovery engine that is making all of this available for the data consumer or the data producer to discover. You might have a data quality engine that is actually operating on the quality rules that are defined in data contracts and then reporting results back. You could have access provisioning systems that are, again, driven by this declarative data artifacts, or you could have data lake systems that are implementing retention. And we think that DataHub is ideally positioned to function as a sort of metadata registry where these declarative data management specifications can be registered and then trigger actions which could actually activate these individual operators. These could be data quality engines, access provisioning systems, retention management systems, which would then report all of this metadata back. Things like this data quality check failed, or access was provisioned, or retention was enabled. And you would have a single overused term, glass pane, to actually manage all of your data in one place and be able to actually see how everything is getting done while applying software engineering practices, not just to writing your DBT models, but in managing your entire data ecosystem. So I know it's a big idea, but I think we've kind of been working towards it in baby steps all this while. And what we would love to see the community help us with is, one, collaborate on the data model with us. The bunch of RFCs open. Please give us your feedback. We are actually going to be making a lot of these things part of the metadata model. There'll all obviously be attached Git developer workflows that would be coming that actually create these things, provision these things, et cetera, help give us feedback on what looks like an ideal ergonomic workflow for you. And then finally, build the actions that integrate with your favorite tools. It might be running a data quality check. It might be provisioning access. It might be setting up retention in your warehouse. The sky is the limit in terms of all of the different things you can do with an architecture like this. And we're really excited to kind of make this a real thing in 2023. And of course, we're going to be making real progress towards this picture reference architecture in Q1 of this year. So
amazing.
That's kind of the idea. This is also a sneak peek into the talk that I'm going to be giving in a couple of days, which is labeled In Search of the Control Plane of Data. So looking forward to seeing if this architecture resonates with all of you and if this is something you're all kind of trying to get to with how you manage your data and organize your data assets. So would love to collaborate, and we'll take the rest of the conversation on Slack.